America for over 20 years, so I'm familiar with the humour in a lot of different countries. So I thought I'd give you a little example of some of the jokes that come from different countries. Well, the thing about England is that they have these very whimsical little jokes that they don't always travel very well, but it seems to me that they're fun. So I will actually I'll give you one from England. Now this is about a taboo subject when you're in America, which I think that they don't care much they don't care too much for jokes about that touch on death. But anyway, there's the woman that looks out of her kitchen window, and she sees that an ambulance has pulled up at her friend Doris's door, and then she sees the ambulance men open the door, and then they take what is evidently her friend's husband away in the ambulance, and it rushes off. Well, she sees the woman come back a couple of hours later, and she rushes over to see what happened. She says, "Doris, I just saw the ambulance there, and it seemed like they were taking Fred away. What happened?" And Doris says, "Well," she says, it was a big surprise. She said, "I was just getting ready, going to cook the Sunday lunch, and I sent Fred down to the bottom of his vegetable garden to get some Brussels sprouts." And she said, "I was actually working away at the sink and looked out and suddenly saw him keel over face down into the Brussels sprouts, and went out there and he was dead." And she said, called the ambulance. They came, tried to bring him round, but nothing happened, and he's gone. So her friend says, "Doris, that's just awful. Whatever will you do now?" So Doris said, "Well, I'm thinking I could always open a can of peas." Okay, I can't hear you laughing. What's the next one? An Irish joke. Well, Irish jokes, there's always a certain logic to a different way of thinking in Ireland. But anyway, there's a funeral. There's a wake going on in an island, certain parts of Ireland. The tradition is to have the deceased in the parlour, and then they'll have a wake, and they'll get drunk, and they end up celebrating the life of the deceased. And the deceased will be lying in an open coffin in the parlour, so people can go in and visit and have a look at him. Well, in this particular case, it was one of twins, that had identical twins that had died. I hope I haven't told you this one before. One of identical twins that had died, and one of the twins sees this distant uncle living, who they don't see very often at all, and he sees that he's going in to see his brother, so he goes in with him, and they're both standing there looking down at the other twin. And then after a little while, the uncle says, "Was it you or the other one that died?" Next one. What's the next one? Now, here's a joke from America, and I'll hope you bear with me, because you might consider this is a bit naughty. Now it's time to hit the delete button or get me off the screen, switch over, look at something else, right? Not very naughty, okay. So the slightly elderly lady in her 60s goes to see the doctor, and she's explaining, "Well, there's nothing wrong with me, doctor. It's my old man. He just seems to have lost all interest in making love." He said, "And you know, I kind of missed that, you know. So I wondered if there was anything that you could do, because I don't want to embarrass him and get him in here. So the doctor said, well, I understand, and I'm going to give you something that's like a little file that you can slip in his coffee, and that should do the trick. Okay, why don't you come back in a week's time and let me know how it went? So a week goes by, and the lady shows up at the surgery again, and the doctor says, oh, I'm really glad that you came. So how did it go? She said, well, doctor, that thing worked amazingly. She said, we were having breakfast, and I put it into his coffee with him when he wasn't looking. I didn't tell him. I didn't want to embarrass him. And then she said, he took a few sips only, and then she said, it was like magic. She said, he suddenly leapt up, he swept all of the breakfast and everything, coffee, the whole thing, tea, coffee, the breakfast, she swept it all off the table. Then he pinned me down on the table, he said, and he made passionate love to me right there and then on the table. So he said, well, how was that? She said, well, it was wonderful. So, mind you, we'll never be able to go in that McDonald's again. That's American humour. So, another one from England. England is always being mocked for its sex, its cold view to sex. Then there used to be a musical or a play called No Sex Please, We're British. So, bearing that in mind, here's one that I thought you might like. As a British couple. This is Bunny and Tinks. I always think that Bunny and Tinks is a good British name. Don't you remember those the guy who used to do a lot of dancing, Fred Astaire? And I don't think he was British, but he used to pretend to be British, and he even had a rather posh British accent. And he always had a friend who was called Bunny. I say, Bunny, are we going out tonight? And Bunny would always say, I say, old chap, do you really want to? And it was all very, very genteel, if a little cold. So, one couple, two people, and they're making love, Bunny and Tinks. And Bunny suddenly says, oh, sorry darling, did I hurt you? And Tinks said, no darling, why do you ask? And Bunny says, I thought you moved. Australia. Now, have you heard any Australian jokes? So, there's two ostriches, two female ostriches, and they're walking along in the bush, and out in the bush, and they're walking along, and they suddenly realize that two males are walking along behind them at some distance. So one female says to the other, I think we should hurry up a little. So they started to get a little faster, and the males sped up to keep up with them, and this went on a little faster, and they kept up, and they kept up behind them. So they came upon a huge outcrop of rock, and they ducked in behind the rock, and the two females stuck their heads in the sand. Up come the two males, and they say, so they went round the rock. So they duck around the rock and say, where'd they go? Got to be a little bit sharp on that one, okay? So that's my little trip on finding things to say about jokes. Hope that you found